Welcome to VUC 2019, Visions Under Construction. Was there a laugh in there anywhere? I think so. Let's not forget, Corrado, let's not forget Com Ideal World, May 6th to 8th, Berlin. Many of us will be there. We'll all be there in spirit. So go for it if you can. It's a terrific event. I'm very much looking forward to it. And I just found out there's going to be some music between Keith and myself. So stay tuned for that. Next up would be, I'm going to guess, ComCon, which is 2019, July 7th to July 9th, somewhere in the disunited kingdom, because by then it's going to be chaos, folks. It's going to be civil war. It's going to be complete idiocy. Well, it already is, actually. Anyway, they really need to fix that, right?
Yeah, we are going literally by the seat of the pants, day by day.
Yeah, well, I don't get why there's not a referendum, but hey, it's none of my business. ClueCon would be the next thing. That's August. Funny, there's nothing in July and September. Wait, July is, wait a minute, July. There's something in July.
ComCon is in July.
Oh, it is in July, right. I just said so. Talk about
ComCon is in August.
I just said, ComCon, July, ClueCon, August. Then there's nothing in September, but October. TADHack and the IIT real-time communication. This is the serious stuff. You know, this is the no frills, no TNA booth babe thing. This is no joke. Although many females in that photo. I don't know who that is, but lots of good people involved with that. So with that, where do we go from here? PITA, you know what that stands for? I don't need to say it, even though we could do explicit here. It's not a problem. Because I don't think I've labeled not explicit, or I think I may have labeled. I thought if you labeled it explicit, it would get more views, actually.
Yeah, possibly. A bit of trolling.
Jay, you've been busy, a busy bunny this week. You had some news, so let's hear about that.
Sure. I've been, so those of you that know me have heard of me talk about the interplanetary file system, which I'm very excited about, which is a decentralized file storage construct that has been under development for about 5 years now. And it's created by a group called Protocol Labs, which I consider to be some of the top developers in the world. And Protocol Labs basically also was one of the largest fundraisers in 2017. They raised about $260 million in about 30 days. So they're well funded. But anyway, they're creating some really cool stuff. And one of the things that I've been looking at this week is something called libp2p, which is a modular, decentralized networking and transport construct that I think might be of interest to many of the people in the VUC community, because it covers many of the things that we built in the past. And while I'm still learning it, I think it's very powerful and would be of interest to the VUC community. So
that's it. I turned my mic level down for that. Oh, you got?
Well, no, I've got some things teed up and everything else, but I thought we were kind of going around the group. And
well, if we go around the group and Corrado gets started on Brexit, it'll be over. It'll be 1 hour. We'll be gone.
Oh, no.
Well,
literally, I'm keeping that out of the discussion because there's nothing to do with technology and intelligence, artificial or human. So
that's true. I forgot I was going to announce that we were now with the blockchain technology and AI, but I forgot that. So,
and I've also been doing a deeper dive and getting my arms around something called Golang, the Go language, which is designed to be distributed language, and I would consider to be the language of choice for peer-to-peer and blockchain constructs.
Why would that be the case? I know nothing about that. I barely know anything about Ruby, and that goes back a few years already.
Yeah, so first of all, Golang, I mean, would you like me to do kind of an introduction to Golang?
Yeah, well, what kind of language it is? It's a structured language. It's an object-oriented language, first of all, and what can you do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before I do that, why don't we ask Michael and Corrado if they have anything they would like to talk about today, and I'll be happy to talk about Golang and what I'm discovering with it, as well as libp2p and so forth, which I think will be very interesting to the VUC community.
Does Michael have any announcements?
Apparently not.
I'm thinking, but it's moving very slowly today. No, there's nothing particularly substantive happening. I am moving forward, trying to progress some of David's efforts in the area of fighting the scourge of robocalls. I'm kind of curious to get to see if anybody had saw the John Oliver last week tonight segment on robocalling last weekend, which
not that any of us here are a stranger to that. Let me mention though, Michael, and we can get right back to you, but the fact is that, I've got a bunch of Google Voice numbers, and I am getting suddenly tons of those. I mean, tons of them. I just got 3 or 4 last week.
Some of your Google Voice numbers result in messages to an email address that I get CC'd on, and I see all those messages.
Well, the Google the VUC number isn't the worst though, but I have another one, and it's a lot of press 1 to get more information, blah blah blah, and get a lot of them in Chinese. We've talked about that before.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to note that there is some conjecture that says that half of all mobile phone traffic will soon be auto dialed. And that's expected in the coming year, and that's we are with phone calls where we were some years ago with email and spam.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing that I throw out there after being on some IETF mailing lists while they developed some new protocols to basically do for telephone calls and caller ID what we do now for email. There are things there's a protocol called Stir and another protocol called Shaken that work together. And there's another protocol called Passport that's also supposed to be sort of like how you hold credentials and stuff. Here's the problem with that. There's some effort to mandate these things, make sure that they happen, accepting that because it's going to stop, or in some way reduce robocalling, except that's never going to happen, even if they're rolled out, because the FCC can only mandate these things within the US. And even if they get universal adoption and a perfect implementation and it all works flawlessly, you're still going to get robocalls from other countries, which is where a lot of them originate anyway. That's outside of jurisdictional boundaries. And so I maintain, and I'm not the expert, but I maintain that the experts that I know have convinced me that this is not a technology issue and there are no technological solutions. This is a behavioral business case problem and can be solved in behavioral and business case or business processes.
Yeah.
Let me just ask around the board, including James, who just arrived, but he's on the phone, but all you guys, my spam level goes up and down. Right now, I'm getting 2 or 3 a day, but they're oftentimes through Gmail. It's so well filtered. Well, they're always filtered anyway, but the peak, I used to get like tons of them. I'm getting maybe 1 or 2 a day now. Corrado, starting with you, you're on the left of my film strip here. How many spams do you get? There may be filtered into a spam folder, but you still have to kind of look once in a while. How many are you getting per day, you think?
up and down is because spammers get new formats, new messages, new things, and until they're not marked as spam in artificial intelligence of the mail servers, they're not tagged as spam, so the spam score doesn't go up. As soon as the spam score of that particular pattern goes up, you don't see them anymore. I have a large number of email addresses on many different domains. Gmail is about 5 or 6 a day. My business about 7 or 8.
Are the Gmails recognized and shunted immediately, automatically into spam?
Gmail is a bit too enthusiastic. Is filtering to spam something that it shouldn't. But if you educate it and say this is not spam, quite a number of times, then it understands that sender is a safe sender and should be kept safe.
Actually, so, I get a lot of stuff in the spam folder from Google Analytics. Their own stuff coming from Google goes into the spam filter.
Okay, not clever. But going back to the point of spam over internet telephony that we were discussing before,
right?
The FCC would be in charge if the call comes with a US DDI. It's spoofed, probably, but if it is a US DDI, the FCC is in charge of that. Because it's routed through the standard landline or everywhere else in the US itself. So is as being generated in the US. So it is in charge of that.
Okay.
But the other point is
that moves jurisdictional issues. That maybe moves the jurisdiction, but it doesn't change anything that you can do in terms of taking action.
No, exactly. That is a business problem, as you said, and everybody agrees. Let's make it a business proposition. If you want to call me, you have to pay a pound. We mooted these quite a number of years ago. You have to pay to connect to my phone number. If then I accept the call, and I say, yes, you're a friend, I accept your call, I have a conversation with you, you get that pound refunded. If it's not a call I want, you will have to pay. You have paid for that. You pay in advance. And if I don't agree with that call, entering my private area, okay, you have paid. And that is a business proposition. If there's people that would like to pay to call me, I don't know why, but if they want to, for promotion, for commercial reasons, for fundraising, anything, they want to invest, and if I agree with the fundraising and I'm giving them money, they can recoup that money from the donation I do.
Has somebody tried that exact thing?
Well, it's quite easy to do. You buy a reverse charge number.
Yeah.
You use, as in the UK, 0845 0870 number.
Hang on. It's gonna be like, yeah. What do you want? you know, it's good luck with that. I mean, that's kind of like Jolly Roger Phone Company. It's a novel thing to tinker with, but it's not going to go ahead.
Well, also it would be a lot of housekeeping, paying people. Well, if you had the whole system set up where you just click a thing and it pays.
Technically, the mechanism is there because the reverse charge is already there, and you can initiate a call anywhere asking for that to be reverse charged. So is the receiver that pays the call. Let's say you are out and about and you have to call your family and you have no money on you. You can initiate a reverse charge call. So the technical mechanism is there to make a call to someone chargeable. It's already there.
Requires complicity on the part of carriers who really don't want to change any patterns of behavior at all.
No.
And that's the issue.
Political parties need that leverage to be able to call you very easily to do fundraising, to do campaigning, to do canvassing, and that.
And they're not
covered. In fact, we already have the mechanism to solve it. We really do. All we have to do is have an efficient traceback scheme. So tracing back to a source, which right now is done effectively by sending smoke signals between carriers. I mean, it's not quite faxing between business offices, but it's pretty darn close. So a more efficient traceback so that you could get, go back the 5 hops to where the call originated, figure out who originated it, and then shut them down because they are already connected to a carrier whose standard terms of service are, you cannot send us any illegal traffic. They just don't take action on those terms of service.
Traffic is money.
Yeah,
Traffic is money. Yep.
exactly.
Yep. And they don't want to make any decisions that cost them any pennies. So, but things where AI comes in and some of the new technology is in, pattern recognition of the traffic, of making sure that we identify. If you're a call center operation and your pattern of outgoing traffic, many calls per second and stuff is pretty identifiable. So, but anyway, the John Oliver thing was kind of cute. A little bit gratuitous in his manner of humor in that particular case. I think he went a little over the top. But who are the bad guys, though? Because they keep on saying the FCC are the bad guys. And the FCC keeps saying how busy they are and how much they're doing while they're accomplishing next to nothing. I think they are quite busy, but they're accomplishing nothing. I think we could say that of the House of Lords right now, too, in fact.
No, the House of Lords is doing pretty well, in fact. It's the House of Commons here in the UK.
The Commons,
and
yes.
Ofcom is practically doing the same, but has now responsibility for even broadcasting of TV and the BBC, and to keep them in check, and they're failing dramatically. Off the top of my head, I've seen small ads on pages, web pages, about a service for your mobile phone that filters calls.
There are two of them. There are two major ones in the U.S. One is called oh goodness, I was just looking at them. One is called Haya, and the other is we've actually talked to them before.
Yeah, I think
Haya is one, and the other is
the one James uses. James, wake up. What is the
can't remember.
What is the service that you use to filter
calls?
Gratuitous calls.
Just a second, I'm looking because
it's something like mail.
First of all, you should know that Umail. Umail is the major one. Yeah. But there's another one called RoboKiller, and what this is part of the FCC being very, very busy. Yeah. Is back in 2012 they had a contest and they said we're going to crowdsource smart ideas to end robocalls, except that by doing all of that, what they did, those all end up being point of reception mechanisms, like stop the call from arriving at your phone rather than stop the caller from placing the call. Yeah. When in reality, you don't want to cure the disease. You want to not get the disease in the first place.
Yeah.
And so going to the source is a smart thing to do, but all of their efforts have focused on endpoint related things and not point of origin. So
the question,
anyhow, I'm grumpy.
Wouldn't it be easier to find patterns if it's a robocall? It's very likely that it's going through a complete sequence of numbers, literally one by one by one by one, making robocalls to a route, and then a route of numbers, the first 6, and then from 0000 to 99999. Isn't it easy to catch that with a bit of AI?
They probably don't do that.
Yeah.
Well, and if you did, as soon as you did some kind of pattern analysis to see that they're working on a calling tree, as soon as that was known, they'd alter the calling tree, right? And you're playing whack-a-mole. The pattern has more to do with the number of outbound calls being placed and call duration. Because if it's a lot of outbound calls, most of which are not being answered, then you pretty much have identified who they are.
Also calls to invalid numbers. Because if you go through the tree, you're bound to fetch and to find a number of invalid numbers. Even if you randomize the numbers, if from a source you get a large number of calls to invalid numbers, it's clearly a robocall.
Now,
we did it. We all did it. Can we put that, make that a business that does that?
The well, arguably, Asterisk and FreeSwitch have done more to enable robocalling than anything else. And when we talked before about SPIT as if SPIT was something separate from standard telephony, but in reality, just as the internet, which once ran over phone lines for its last mile, has subsumed. It's now the phones run over the internet. Generally, the phones run over IP. So I would argue that there's no such thing as SPIT. It's all SPIT because you don't know whether you're IP or TDM anywhere. Anyway, these days it's all kind of one thing. But certainly, the economics of IP telephony makes things a lot easier. You know what? I'm ready to go. We could do like Go.
You mean Golang or whatever?
Golang. I'm interested in Golang in the same way that I'm interested in Erlang, which is that I don't know them, but I'm curious about languages.
Erlang is not a language; it's a unit of measure for telephony, is it? For how
Erlang,
much?
there actually is a language called Erlang as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Erlang is actually from the telephony world, and I think it was a construct of AT&T. So, anyway, would you like to start with Go and Golang and
go.
What the interest?
3, 2, 1, go.
All right. So so I've been following and part of kind of the Node.js community for a number of years, and a lot of the hard dyed-in-the-wool Node.js folks are moving over to Go, and there's some pretty compelling reasons to do that. But let me just kind of share my screen, if I might, and I'll show a few things that might be of interest to folk, and sort of talk through them. But hang on, my computer is a little sluggish today. So anyway, hopefully you can see this, but this is basically the Go programming language, and it's strongly typed, it's compiled, it's designed to be distributed, and the origins of it, although it's something that started in Google and was started to address some of Google's problems, if you look deeper into it, it's actually has many roots from something called Plan 9 from Bell Labs, which was a distributed language that they were creating that was Unix based, and a lot of Go is Unix based and riffs from Unix. But basically, this is the main page of Golang, and they've got some nice tutorials and so forth. But it's fairly new in that I think the first public implementation was around 2012, and I think it's well thought out, and I'm really excited to be learning about this. So I will stop screen sharing at that point and ask this if there's any questions that anyone might have about Go before I get into libp2p.
Well, how is that different from what you see Python or PHP or Ruby or C++? It's well, the little bit of code on that page is structured almost exactly like every other programming language.
Well, so the specification on Go is tighter than Ruby, and I'm not an expert in Ruby or anything else, but I was listening to a podcast by a fellow named, or a session that was done by a fellow named Dave Cheney, who is an expert in Go, and he was comparing Go with JavaScript, with Ruby, with Python, with PHP, all of those, and he was talking about, the advantages of Go. You can compile it down to a single binary that runs in multiple different devices, it's, you know, there are differences between the package structure of Go and the dependency structure of Node.js, which I think is very questionable at this point. It's fast, it's simpler, they've part of the advantage of Go is definitely the things that they've included in the language, but the other part of the advantage is things that they have intentionally left out. So there was basically a group of 3 senior network engineers, developers, designers that were the origin of how Go was going to be structured. They've designed it so that it's very complementary and conducive to collaboration, and there's just a lot of, I think, very compelling pieces to it. And they've tried to make it modular in the philosophy of Unix to keep things simple modular pieces that work, that you can basically compose to do what you want it to do.
Yeah, as I saw in that code, there's includes, so you can include a library probably. And when that's compiled, it goes inside the executable. If I can expand on a thing you said, how does Go, a Go compiled program, execute on different architectures? Can it go across 8086, ARM, RISC, or something?
Yeah, I run it on Raspberry Pis.
That's still an 8086.
No, that's ARM.
It's ARM.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If you compile it on an 8086, does it run on an ARM, or do you need to recompile on the ARM platform?
No, I'm pretty sure you compile it to the same binary, and it'll run on all of them.
Okay.
So, and it's you can run it on IoT devices. So that's pretty compelling. But I'm not a total expert on the variety of devices and so forth that are out there. The other big advantage of Go is it's designed for concurrency. So it's designed to run on a peer-to-peer mesh network where you got a bunch of different concurrent things that are happening, and that is another one of the big advantages. Does that make sense?
It's practically a state-based machine. It changes of state, trigger events, and you respond to events.
Yeah, I believe that's.
Yeah, it's not linear programming. It's not procedural, but you get signals, you get events, and you respond to those. Yeah, a state machine practically. That's good. I created a state machine in the late 1990s for a voice activated and voice managing calls system with discrete cards on analog lines that you could press numbers and get different arborescence and get through what you wanted to the people you wanted to speak and before asterisk. That was in 1997.
So anyway, I'm working through Go, and a big part of the reason that I'm interested in Go is because IPFS, the Interplanetary File System, the reference implementation is in Go, and so they also have another implementation that's in JavaScript, so that IPFS will run in the browser, and libp2p runs in the browser as well. So let me switch over to screen share, unless anybody has any other questions about Go. Let me switch over to screen share here, and I'll talk about libp2p, which I think should be very interesting to the VUC community. So you should be able to see, this is the P2P.io website, and it's talking about the modular network stack that it is. And basically, here are some of the things that they include within their stack: is transports, stream muxers, crypto channel, discovery, peer routing, record stores, NAT traversal, connection and connection updates, general purpose utility, data types. Here is a talk that was about libp2p for blockchain applications, and this was from InfoQ, which this happened, I think, back in, let's see, September 18th of 2018. And this was by one of the developers, Chris Hakia, I guess it is, who's with a very interesting project called Open Bazaar, which is like a decentralized peer-to-peer eBay. So I would highly recommend this particular talk on libp2p. And by the way, libp2p, as I'll talk about in a moment, has reference or has implementations within Go, as well as JavaScript and Rust. So here is another talk. Actually, this one has not loaded for some reason. This is by one of the, this is from Web3 Summit 2018, dated October 29th, 2018. This is by one of the team developers with Protocol Labs, a fellow named Mike Gelzer. And here he lists out the different components of libp2p, which is transports, stream multiplexers, crypto channels, content routing, record stores, peer discovery, NAT traversal, peer routing, and other things. But later in the talk, he actually does a demo where you've got basically a chat application going peer-to-peer. And in these two cases, the top two pieces, you're in Go, while over here, you're in JavaScript in the lower left-hand corner. And in the lower right-hand corner, you're actually in Rust. So you've got these different languages that are basically able to communicate on a pub-sub basis, talking with one another. So anyway, I'm excited about libp2p. It's, I think it has many, I'll stop screen sharing. I think it's got some very interesting elements that, you know, when you hold it next to SIP, when you consider the NAT traversal elements and the kind of the ubiquity of how you can implement this, I think it's very interesting. That's what I've been working on.
What kind of thing would you want to do with it, even just as an experiment, entry level?
So I'm involved in a team that's creating a new way to manage legal documents on a peer-to-peer decentralized basis, where the documents are actually encrypted, and the system basically runs on small board computers, i.e. Raspberry Pis. And there's a whole set of tutorials by a company called Coral Health, and they're talking about a new way to manage health records. So we're applying this to legal records, but the idea is to have a truly peer-to-peer network of Raspberry, or a constellation of Raspberry Pis, where you can store these encrypted legal documents, and you have the private keys. You have the private key to access the legal documents confined to a Raspberry Pi that actually can be turned off and basically put into cold storage, if that makes sense.
Interesting. I'm trying to figure out why that would be. Why the smallness of the CPU? In other words, why not have a bunch of storage units, but have a little bit more powerful and more reliable CPU part? What's the advantage?
You can do the cloud-based setup as well. The advantage of having it on a Raspberry Pi is, first of all, you can basically remove the SD card, and put that SD card like in a safe deposit box. In fact, multiple safe deposit boxes. So that's one advantage. Another advantage is that, and it's not necessarily small board computers, but we also are interested in doing like a 2 out of 3 multi-signature construct. So it takes 2 out of 3 parties to open up a document and so forth. So does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I still don't see the why it would have to be Raspberry Pi with regard to the 2 out of 3 or whatever. In other words,
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be, but smaller computers are cheaper, consume less energy, and if we distribute the computational load throughout the planet, we probably reduce the pollution instead of having.
Is that their idea? Is like a carbon footprint thing? So hey, we got these tiny little computers, no worries.
No, I think it's more that you actually another component that I didn't talk about with libp2p is you don't even need TCP/IP.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually have these things work if you're connected via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or even audio signals. So that's pretty strong. You don't need the internet, and that's. I think that has some big advantages to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Disaster zones and but there's little power. But yeah, computational power distributed in small units is less impactful of a big data center that will need AC. You can run 100 Raspberry Pis in a large area, and you don't need cooling. But the same computational power in a single server will need an AC unit. That's the advantage.
Those I don't have one of those. I wish they would have come out when I was 18, because I bought a lot of kits and stuff, but I don't have one now, and I have too many other things to play with, mostly mechanical things like saxophones. But my question is, does the Raspberry Pi typically run on batteries mostly, or is it connected to a low voltage, like a 5-volt supply?
I think it uses a USB power supply.
So
hang
it's
on,
like,
hang on. Let me show you.
Well, obviously you can do anything you want, but my question was more typically when you're running it. Let's see, those supplies.
Okay, here is a Raspberry Pi, and it has a micro 5-volt power connector. But you can run them from batteries, or you can run them from, I quite often use a PoE extractor. And there's actually a PoE hat. I have one here, but I don't have it handy.
What's the milliamperage on something like that? Just in general, it's obviously going to be way less than an amp, which is
it's on the order. It's under 100 milliamps.
100. So, Michael, you're an expert on this. You probably know the answer to this. If you have like a Bluetooth headset or a Fitbit, or a watch, you're talking. What's the current drawn by those to charge? They're like more like 25 or something like that.
Oh, just a few milliamps.
Because half the time they don't even keep the charger on, if you know what I mean. If you've got one of those chargers that's not a charger, what do you got there, Corrado?
That's a power supply for a Raspberry Pi. 168050 battery, rechargeable battery in a standard, and that's the plug that you put in.
All right. Actually, what I was trying to get to is that if these are really, really small drain, then you could run several of them on the equivalent of, say, a phone charger. Phone chargers are generally about 2 amps. So they could probably run 10 Raspberry Pis on one of those, right? 5
depending on computational power and what you're squeezing out, of course, is consuming more or less. But again, disaster zones, you can get these charged somewhere on a generator, and then Raspberry Pis are sitting around with these. You can swap in and out very quickly. So,
and I think they must draw actually closer to. I think they must draw closer to an amp.
An amp is
because I have had one instance I'm just thinking of now where there was an application I was using that would put a little flashing warning on screen if you had connected it to a power supply that wasn't quite delivering it. But in any event, the kind of thing that Jay is doing is fairly low powered stuff. You're not taxing it. You just need a host. You're not doing anything hefty.
Can't read that, Corrado. No, it's way out of focus.
Okay, if you look at that at the back of that, okay,
read it to us because we can't.
5 volt, 1,000 milliamps.
Well, that's an amp. So
okay, that's an amp
by my math anyway.
Exactly. And so this little thing can power a Raspberry Pi, and the capacity is 2,200 milliamp hours. So that runs a Raspberry Pi at full power, 1 amp for 2 and a bit of hours.
Interesting.
In case of you need a backup or a power supply for disaster recovery or anything else, and that's done. And a $5 probably.
Well, what I'm trying to compare to, because everybody's got a million devices, right? Nobody on this planet, at least in the first world, doesn't have watches and multiple phones and all kinds of devices that need charging. And a lot of that, I mean, I think my phones, these are, 5-inch phones like OnePlus or even an iPhone. I don't have one, but I think those are all around 2 amps chargers. So the point is, this is the current that we're using every day. People who talk on their phones a lot, they're charging their phones once or more a day on a 2 amp charger. So you're still talking about 1 amp and below is pretty reasonable, small amount of current being drawn. So interesting.
Well, the other 5 volts is 5 watts. 5 watts is a small lamp. Is nothing.
Yeah.
The other big advantage of the Raspberry Pi platform is you can hook all kinds of devices to it. Arduinos, sensors, lighting, cameras, microphones, everything.
Fans.
So it becomes a very ubiquitous computational platform that has a really, I think, a very efficient form factor in that you can, they're cheap, they're powerful, relatively powerful, and they're very versatile. So
you can actually find on the market easily all kinds of interfaces, right? So there's ways.
Especially because that I/O connector has direct access to the bus and many other information I/O in the Raspberry Pi that in other computers are not available. We can only use PCI or PCI Express to interface additional cards in a normal computer. That I/O on the Raspberry Pi instead is much more powerful. You can do many things through that.
Presumably there's lots of inputs, like you can find the temperature because there's a temperature thermocouple or other sensor, lots of sensors.
Those things are available, right? Yeah. But they're not built in, but they are available.
No, available. That's what I meant, accessories. And also outputs, I assume there's the equivalent of some kinds of relays if you wanted to turn your air conditioner on or something, which would be a hefty relay, but still there must be a way to do that by outputting a 1 to some port and audio,
there's actually a company that's providing like off-the-shelf industrial interfaces for the Raspberry Pis, so you can run heavier equipment that's basically controlled by a Pi. So
I know that there's a company that does a CNC that is controlled by a Raspberry Pi.
Yep. There's a fellow that does video tutorials, and one of his latest, I haven't watched it yet, but he's actually talking about creating a 3D printer using a Raspberry Pi. So, yeah.
You guys may find this interesting. I don't know if you remember, but before there was a Raspberry Pi, there was something called gum sticks. And gum sticks were these little arm boards that were literally the size of a stick of gum, and you could get little daughter cards for them. And this was years before Pi came along. Those same people who did gum sticks now, after the Pi sort of revolution, are now doing something called Geppetto, which is basically a way where you can take all these little prefabbed modules. You can take a little CPU platform, even a Pi, and you can design a daughter card that they will then custom make for you. And so if you need to add USB and Ethernet and a temperature sensor and a display and 3 or 4 other things, you just sort of drag and drop these little things on these little designer, and then they make the board for you and send it to you, and so you can prototype. quite effectively,
Interesting.
which is pretty cool.
Okay, 3/4 of an hour through
Wow.
the PITA, so the rest is just coasting downhill, right?
Well, I do have a question, Michael. What you brought up, this kind of versatile drag and drop component structure.
I'm just finding the window. Let's see
So
if
has
I can get
anybody
it.
played with Node-RED?
Now, when you talk about Node-RED, what do you mean? Because in my world, I'm thinking something that's maybe different. I'm thinking
Code Red.
of an open source Flash emulation or Flash clone, but that's something different, maybe.
Yeah, this is this is actually a project that was it's complementary to both Arduino as well as Raspberry Pis, and it was something that was started at IBM and has been taken over by the JavaScript Foundation, I believe. And I'm trying to do the screen share.
It.
Yep, that's it. Thank you. So anyway, I've been playing around with this as well, and it's very powerful. You can do these drag and drop flows. Either you can program the modules using JavaScript. You can do curl API, command line functionality. It also has a very, I think, powerful web. Opto22 is the one that does that one. Opto22 does these industrial devices that allow you to do higher powered control of devices, basically. So, and they have a very good set of tutorials on Node-RED as well as Raspberry Pis and so forth. So anyway, but one of the cool things that I found out about Node-RED is their graphical user interface. Not only can you create effectively like a website, but it works on a mobile without having to download an app. So if you just connect to the IP address of where you're running your Node-RED server, you effectively have a mobile app without having to, go through the App Store and all that stuff. So that's pretty powerful. Anyway, those are some of the things I've been playing around with. And if Mr. Bodie was here, I'm sure he'd want me to do a dangerous demo, which I'm not prepared to do.
I don't know what happened. I think he dropped out.
Yeah, looks like he was very busy.
Here's the Geppetto stuff, just incidentally. So you basically, because they have all these different modules all ready to go, this was difficult to do before, where you would have to start from scratch. I want a little how to put it, a little GPIO. I need a couple of serial interfaces. I need maybe an RS-422 interface for something else. You would have to custom sort of put all these things together, do the board layout, and it was fairly sophisticated stuff. Now you can just sort of drag and drop from their library of modules. And it's even a web-based drag and drop designer.
Well, given the limited number of combinations you can have, don't you think they already have pre-built boards with the combinations you want?
They have a library of boards that are available. I'm just trying to look and see Meet Geppetto, like UARTs and different audio interfaces and things. They have a library of pre-built things, but they don't have, as you say, there's a finite number of combinations, but it's still a substantial number of combinations, because you might need 3 audio interfaces, and you don't want gigabit Ethernet, but you want Wi-Fi, or you want LoRaWAN, or you want, so it becomes a bunch of stuff.
Interesting. So practically quick prototyping.
Yeah, it's like rapid prototyping so that you can get to market fast with goofy little things.
So you have a software project, you need a hardware to support it. You just drag and drop, and it's done.
And then it's scalable, right? Because you've got a manufacturing ready design that you can go forward and only your economics changes as you hand off to a larger scale manufacturer.
Yeah, to kind of circle back to some other things, I guess Facebook had an outage today or yesterday or whatever.
Yesterday, yeah, they did.
Yeah, and
Facebook and Instagram, because it's
and
practically the same thing.
So part of this whole, Golang, libp2p, IPFS, Node-RED, all these things, the small board computers, is reducing our dependency upon centralized constructs like Facebook, like Google, so forth. So that's a big piece that I think is going to become more important to people as we see these, continued data breaches, continued, outages and so forth. And, having services be dropped like Google Plus, pushing the power to the peers and the edge, I think is a really, really important dimension that's underway in what's called the Web 3.0.
It's clever, it's safe, and it's better.
And yet,
the one thing it isn't is it's widespread.
Yeah, that's the people stay on Facebook, and they stay on the little silos. A lot of professionals are on LinkedIn.
And we stay on the public switch telephone network.
Yeah, hey, that's hard to understand, isn't it? Why hasn't that changed over? I don't know. Vested interests, I guess, political clout in every country.
It's a universal connector. Everybody can have one.
Yeah,
in every nation on the planet.
That is true. At the same time, in the first world, nobody answers their phone anymore. Almost. A lot of us, well, you know what? I got a phone. This is funny, actually. You know how on TV and fiction, especially in sitcoms, people are waiting for the doctor to call. Either it's a pregnancy test or some horrible thing, disease. I was not waiting for a call, and last night at 7:45 at night. So that's normally going to be some kind of robocall. We don't get those much in France, but it's going to be something lame probably, or maybe it's whatever. Anyway, unidentified call. I mean, I almost never get that where there's just nothing there. I didn't answer it. It called again. I still didn't answer it. Sometimes it's internet providers. That's that's about the worst I get is, why don't you come with us? And sometimes they call you and you're already with them. Anyway, the unidentified caller left a message, and it was a doctor, and it was something I was expecting. Nothing, I'm not going to die tomorrow that I know of. But the point is, who answers calls, especially if you don't see who it is? So it's universal, but it's also a lot of people just do not talk on the phone anymore. They don't want to. Yeah, I know kids do, but other than that, you have a boring job, you're on your phone. But the day-to-day living thing, most people I know, you have to text them first. Or have a rendezvous. It's rare, friend-wise. People are talking on WhatsApp or whatever it is they use, Instagram. I don't know, which I don't use.
It's a question of prioritization. I prefer asynchronous communication. You send me a message, I reply when I have time. Yeah. And the concentration and the inclination to answer to you. Why should I answer the phone and answer you immediately? If it's not an emergency, why do you need to contact me exactly now? I have so many channels open. Use any of them. When I have time, I will connect with you. It's less stressful. It's a better life.
Yeah,
we're all busy.
I made my first phone call over my Google Home device last week. So I said, okay, Google, call blah blah blah, and it did it. It was limited as to what it could do, but it was a different experience to just without picking up a device, without dialing a number, say, call blah blah blah, and maybe we'll see more of that.
You could do that on a phone. Oh, you're not picking up a device, though. That's what you mean.
Right.
No, I can make my mobile phone a call with Google.
Right, or you could do it in your car. You can do it in your car too.
Yeah. If it's connected to the Bluetooth, I can just say, okay, Google, call this and that. And I have also, don't do that. I also have
Alexa,
the ability to dial directly numbers. So if you say the exact number you want to dial, the Google Assistant will dial that number. You don't have to have the name of the person in your list and so on.
Wait a minute. That sounds like we're going back to my mother's day when she used to call the operator and tell her area code 312-225. That's, I'm not going to know. Why would
Exactly. We have an assistant. So every phone, Siri or the Google Assistant or everyone can do that.
You didn't see my example of, remind me to put the car in the garage when the sun goes down. I went around back and forth 20 minutes with the assistant, who should know when the sun's going to go down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if there was really AI applied to that stuff, there may be interesting experiments, but if they were really using some intelligence in that, if you have the sentence, which is easily parsed, because it's waiting for a reminder. So you say, remind me to put the car in the garage. When do you want me to remind? When the sun goes down. When the sun goes down, what do you want me? And it went back and forth. Why doesn't it just look up? If it had any intelligence at all, it would have looked up when the sun's going to go down. It knows where I am. It could do that to the second, literally. Anyway,
though, this is one of the problems in the height of artificial intelligence. Is it is hype, because establishing context is hard, and so we're getting good at natural language understanding, but then contextualizing that or decontextualizing it is really tough still.
It's even still tough for some humans, for many of them that are struggling to get things in context. We know that there are a lot of people with in the autistic spectrum, for example, that don't understand context, and they take things literally, and they don't interpret what you say. So it's a very sophisticated activity, and to ask that to an AI that is practically a 3-4-year-old child, it is still
the AI.
Beyond.
The AI, here's the way this should have gone, actually. The assistant, how can I help you? You want to set a reminder? Yes. Remind me to put the car in the garage. When do you want it? When the sun goes down. Actually, the sun doesn't go down. The sun revolves around the earth, and then it goes into a hole. Anyway, I think that's it. We're 59 minutes.
All of a sudden, I'm hearing Gordon Lightfoot doing sundown.
Yeah.
At the very last minute, you said that the sun revolves around the earth. Okay, we're going flat earth now. What is the next argument?
Anybody have any old?
There was a headline this morning that said that Mercury is actually closer to the Earth than Venus, which freaked a few people out. But that's because
Mercury causes autism.
It's because of the orbital dynamics. Mercury goes around a lot faster and is in a straight line closer to the Earth more often than Venus is. Yeah. But
anyway. It's hot there, by the way.
Yeah.
Bada boom. All right.
Very curious that we measure temperature with mercurium-based thermometers.
Not anymore.
Digital now. But.
Oh, you know what? Sad news. A death in my family. My multimeter that I bought for $9 on Amazon was sitting in a drawer. It was used about 3 times. I tried to use it today. I needed it. Dead.
Batteries, probably?
No, I replaced. Of course, I replaced the battery. No, something's wrong with it. You just can't get a digital multimeter for $9 and expect it to work, right?
Mm.
It worked for a second, and now it doesn't. So I had to go back and revise my review. And if you want to revise your reviews of the VUC, please go ahead and do that on iTunes. Give us 1 star to 5 stars, whatever. By the way, they have removed, this is strictly to the guys who are in this Hangout, they have removed the number of watchers. So I can't see anymore whether anybody's watching at all or not. I don't know if you were able to see that, Michael, but you have seen it from time to time. There is nothing there anymore. They killed that whole display. So
is that to avoid people getting depressed because they have no watchers?
well, we've had between 1 and 80, depending on who the guest was. And, you know, for what we do, that's even 10 is very good, actually, because after all, it's published. There's no good reason, no compelling reason. We're not doing breaking news, so there's no great reason to watch it live. Okay, I've taken over 1 minute over now. Great. Thanks, everybody. Next week, we have the usual random topics. So we have no idea what we're doing, but this is podcasting. This is the real thing. This isn't your Spotify. This is not the Netflix for podcasts that you've been hearing about and will continue to hear about. If I were you, I would not pay for this, right? Why would you? So forget Netflix for podcasts. And let me look over to my complicated control panel and leave you with this.